It was an ordinary Tuesday at Lincoln High School, but what happened in the cafeteria that day would ripple through the hallways for months. Jamal Carter, a senior known for his intimidating presence and a reputation for pushing people around, crossed a line he didn't even know existed. He laid hands on Aisha Thompson, a junior who kept to herself but carried a quiet strength nobody saw coming. 10 seconds later, Jamal's world turned upside down in a way he never could have predicted. Aisha Thompson walked through the crowded cafeteria with her tray, her braids swinging lightly as she navigated the chaos of lunch hour. She was used to the noise, the cliques, the occasional stare. As a black girl in a school where racial tensions sometimes simmered beneath the surface, she'd learned to keep her head high and her words sharp when needed. But Aisha wasn't looking for trouble. She just wanted to eat her lunch and get through the day. Jamal Carter, on the other hand, was always looking for a reaction. At 6'2", with a linebacker's build, he'd been the school's unspoken enforcer since freshman year. He didn't always start fights, but he finished them. Most kids avoided him, and those who didn't learned quickly to regret it. That day, Jamal was in a mood. His boys were egging him on, laughing as he scanned the room for someone to mess with. His eyes landed on Aisha. She was sitting alone at a table near the window, scrolling through her phone while picking at her food. Something about her calm demeanor irritated Jamal. Maybe it was the way she seemed unbothered, like she didn't care about the hierarchy he'd built in his head. He sauntered over, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floor, his friends trailing behind like a pack of hyenas. "Yo, what you doing sitting here like you own the place?" Jamal's voice cut through the cafeteria chatter. A few heads turned, sensing the shift in the air. Aisha didn't look up right away. She took a slow sip of her water, set the bottle down, and only then met his gaze. "I'm eating," she said, her tone flat but steady. "You need something?" Jamal smirked, leaning in closer. His boys snickered, feeding off his bravado. "You got a smart mouth, huh? Bet you wouldn't talk like that if you knew what's good for you." Aisha's eyes narrowed, but she didn't flinch. She'd dealt with guys like Jamal before. Guys who thought their size or their loudness made them untouchable. She wasn't impressed. "I know what's good for me," she said. "Question is, do you?" The cafeteria grew quieter. Students at nearby tables stopped talking, their eyes darting between Aisha and Jamal. Nobody expected her to push back. Jamal's smirk faded, replaced by a flash of anger. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by someone half his size. Without thinking, he reached out and shoved her shoulder, hard enough to make her tray rattle. That was his mistake. 10 seconds. That's all it took for everything to change. Aisha was on her feet before anyone could blink, her chair scraping against the floor. She didn't yell or curse. She didn't need to. Her movements were precise, almost surgical. She grabbed Jamal's wrist, twisted it in a way that made his knees buckle, and used his own momentum to flip him onto the table. His back hit the surface with a thud, sending trays and soda cans clattering to the ground. The cafeteria erupted in gasps and shouts. Jamal's boys froze, their laughter dying in their throats. Aisha stood over him, her grip still on his wrist, her face calm but her eyes burning. "Don't ever put your hands on me again," she said, her voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. Then she let go and stepped back, leaving Jamal sprawled across the table, clutching his arm and staring at her in disbelief. Nobody knew it then, but Aisha wasn't just any girl. Her father, a retired Marine, had taught her self-defense since she was 6. She'd spent years training in martial arts, not because she wanted to fight but because he told her the world wasn't always kind to black girls like her. "You don't start trouble," he'd said, "but you finish it." Aisha had taken those words to heart. Jamal scrambled to his feet, his face a mix of pain and humiliation. He wanted to say something, to save face, but the words wouldn't come. The crowd was buzzing now, phones out, recording the moment that would haunt him for the rest of senior year. Aisha didn't wait for him to recover. She picked up her tray, walked to the trash can, and dumped her food like nothing had happened. Then she left the cafeteria, her head still high. By the end of the day, the story had spread like wildfire. Videos of the incident were all over Snapchat and Instagram, with captions like, "Bully gets owned and don't mess with her." Teachers tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Aisha became an instant legend, though she didn't seem to care. When her friends asked her about it later, she just shrugged. "He shouldn't have touched me," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Jamal, meanwhile, wasn't the same after that. His reputation took a hit he couldn't shake. Kids who used to fear him now whispered and laughed behind his back. He avoided Aisha like she was radioactive, and for the first time, he started keeping to himself. Some said he was embarrassed. Others thought he was scared. Either way, he'd learned a lesson he wouldn't forget. The school administration got involved, of course. They called Aisha and Jamal into the principal's office the next day. Principal Harris, a stern woman with a no-nonsense attitude, watched the security footage in silence. Jamal tried to spin it, saying he was just playing around and didn't mean to hurt her. Aisha didn't argue or interrupt. She just sat there, her hands folded, waiting for her turn. When the principal asked for her side, Aisha spoke clearly. "He put his hands on me without permission. I defended myself. That's all." She didn't mention her training or her father's lessons. She didn't need to. The footage spoke for itself. Principal Harris gave Jamal a week's suspension and mandatory anger management sessions. Aisha got a verbal warning about escalating conflicts, but it was clear the principal wasn't pushing too hard. Some teachers even privately admitted they were impressed by how Aisha handled herself. "That girl's got grit," one of them said in the staff lounge. The incident didn't just affect Aisha and Jamal. It changed the dynamic at Lincoln High. Kids who'd been bullied started standing up for themselves more, inspired by Aisha's example. A few even approached her, asking how she stayed so calm under pressure. She didn't give them a playbook or a pep talk. "Just know your worth," she'd say, and leave it at that. For Aisha, life went on. She kept her grades up, stayed close to her small circle of friends, and continued her martial arts training on weekends. She didn't seek out the spotlight, but it found her anyway. Classmates who'd barely noticed her before now greeted her in the halls. Some called her a hero. Others just respected her for not backing down. Aisha took it all in stride, but deep down, she was glad she'd stood her ground. Not just for the fame, but for herself. Jamal's voice tried to keep his image alive, bragging about his football stats or how he'd seen it coming, but it didn't stick. Jamal himself stayed quiet, his once loud presence now subdued. He showed up to his suspension, served his time, and came back to school with less swagger. He didn't bother anyone after that, at least not like he used to. Some said he'd started therapy, others that he was just laying low until graduation. Whatever the case, the Jamal who'd walked into that cafeteria was gone. Aisha's father heard about the incident from her mother, who'd gotten a call from a friend at the school. That night, he sat her aside at the dinner and asked her, "You okay?" She nodded, and he smiled, a rare thing for a man who kept his emotions tight. "Good," he said. "You did what you had to do." That was all, but it meant everything to her. Months later, the videos had mostly disappeared, replaced by newer drama. But the story of that day lived on in Lincoln High's collective memory. It wasn't just about a bully getting humbled or a girl refusing to be pushed around. It was about what happened when someone underestimated the wrong person and paid the price. Aisha carried that moment with her, not as a badge or a burden, but as a quiet strength that had always been there, waiting to be tested. She didn't change who she was, but it showed everyone else what she'd been all along. As for Jamal, he'd never look at her, or himself, the same way again.